Luis, I've been knowing him since he was 17 years old. He's actually started comedy when I started. We started in 2014 together.
Yeah.
He was 17 only, and then he quit for like a year and then came back like in 2015, 2016. He doesn't like talking about it because he feels like that makes him seem like he's been doing it for longer, and which is true. I mean, but he did start when I started. I started in April 2014. He was around like that summer.
Okay. What did you guys were like from the same high school or something?
No. I'm older.
Okay.
And then no, it's just so when I started 2014,
Yeah.
there was far less Latinos, far less Mexicans than there is now.
Not that many.
So there's more now.
Okay.
So if you saw like another Mexican or a Latino, you kind of gravitated towards that person. So when I saw him, and I saw and he actually used to go to open mic sometimes with his mom, because
you didn't bring that.
He didn't bring that up.
No.
So he was only 17. Right. So there's certain bars that they wouldn't allow him unless he took his mom.
Wow.
So his mom looks Mexican. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I talked to him since he was a kid. And yeah, so I've been knowing him since 2014.
Okay.
Yeah.
What got you started? Like, what got you started?
I wanted to do it for a long time. I want to say since like my last year of high school.
Mm-hmm.
I actually wanted to be more of a writer at the beginning. In high school, like I was big into like sitcoms and shows like like Simpsons, and at that time The Office was like in its prime and stuff like that. And I looked up like at all the writers of those shows, and a lot of them were stand-up comedians. So not knowing anything about the business, I just thought I had to be a stand-up comedian first.
Gotcha.
And then I would be able to get a writing job. But once I started doing stand-up, I fell in love with it and stuff like that. You know?
Like stand-up has that instant gratification to it rather than writing a script and then the whole process of somebody acting it out. Okay, so you wanted to be a writer first.
I wanted to be a writer first. Had I known back then, like, that you could take classes for script writing and stuff like that, I probably would have gotten into that. But at that time, I didn't know. So I just looked. So at that time, it was there was a famous story in The Office. B.J. Novak. Yeah. He got hired based off a stand-up set. They saw him, so. And then, like, Seinfeld was popular, so Seinfeld was a stand-up comedian. And so I just kept thinking, like, I had to be a stand-up comedian first. So that's why I chose to go into stand-up as opposed to just go into, like, schools for writing and stuff like that.
Okay, so essentially your initial inspiration was, like, sitcoms. I'm curious, what are your top 3 sitcoms of all time?
All time, I want to say my favorite one is Arrested Development.
Okay.
The original run.
Okay, yeah, that reboot.
Yeah, the reboot. I don't want to talk bad about Netflix because hopefully they give me a special. They're like, we heard that one podcast where you talk shit about us. So yeah. I mean, Netflix fucked it up. Arrested Development will be my number 1. I like Community too. I'm a big fan of Community.
Okay.
And number 3, that's tough, man. That's really tough.
You can think on it if you want. There's no rush.
I could get back to it later, maybe. Okay. Yeah.
It sounds like you like that documentary style. Yeah,
I did. I mean, if I had to go for number 3, I would say The British Office. Have you seen The British Office?
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, like it really shows how much they fake the accent when they make American movies. Because like when you watch it, there's a lot of stuff that I couldn't understand on the first watch. Yeah. And I was like, oh, so a lot of when they have British people like on American movies or American shows, they're actually like Americanizing their accent, like. Interesting. Yeah, that like because when you watch it, it's like it's crazy. But it's I say that those 3. I mean, I like the rest of the Development and The Office, the British one. I think the thing those 2 have in common is that they were short, so they didn't have enough time to get bad. Like the Office in the U.S. did. That one had
10 years.
Yeah, and it to be honest, like the last 4 seasons, they were the quality wasn't as good as the other one.
I agree. I agree that like stories need to end. Like,
yeah,
a story needs. This is what the same issue with like Marvel. Like that. I don't know if you're a Marvel person.
No, I'm not. But
Okay.
but yeah.
For me, that's my.
But it's the most popular thing in the world, so I know someone think about it. Yeah.
When the Endgame thing happened, when they all came together, I was like, "This is it. This is the end of the story." And they're like, "No, we need more money."
Yeah.
And they just kept going.
But that's what it was with The Office too. It was the show that was making NBC the most, or the sitcom that was making the most money. So they just had to keep it going. Even when Michael Scott left. Steve Carell, they should have ended it there, but no, it was still the #1 sitcom on NBC, so they had to try to keep it going.
What is it about sitcoms that really like stuck with you?
I've always been I just always been driven to comedy. You know, like I when I was growing up, I never really watched dramas. I started watching them now that I'm older, but when I was growing up, like if it didn't have some type of funniness to it, it just was boring to me. When it came to shows, in specific, you know.
And sitcoms are perfect for constant joke machines, basically. Okay, and then you're from Chicago, yeah?
I grew up here, yeah.
Okay, which neighborhood?
I grew up in a neighborhood called Belmont Cragen. I mean, it's by Fullerton, and I live there now again. Okay. I just moved last year again. Fullerton is Central right now, but I grew up a little closer to Fullerton, Austin, and then in that area.
I'm from California.
Yeah, so you don't know. Yeah, I mean, most transplants don't go that far west.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I was trying to be as much. When I first moved here, I was in Pilsen.
Okay.
Yeah,
Pilsen. So you talk about like Pilsen and Little Village. Those are like two traditional Mexican neighborhoods, but they're older. They're older. You know, they were Mexican neighborhoods 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
The neighborhood where I grew up in is like, when I was growing up, we were like the first generation of like Latinos. Now it's super Latino. Now it's known. Like if you talk to the youth, like people in their teenagers or 20s, they'll claim it. Like, oh, I'm from the Cragen or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
The Cragen?
Yeah.
All right.
There's even if I would have said that 15 years ago, nobody would have known where it was at, because it was such a new Latino neighborhood and like nobody knew about it.
Right.
Everybody's like, oh, it's the north side? Yeah, it's all white people. Like, no, like over there. Like
the Cragen,
it's very immigrant, still very immigrant, like very first generation.
Okay.
Yeah, like people in the streets and in the stores, you'll hear Spanish more than you hear English.
That's dope, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's one of the things that I loved when I first moved here. Like, coming from California, I was a little nervous. And then when I was in Pilsen, I was like, oh, this is Mexican. Oh, I know how to handle it. This is okay. This is fun. And you were saying, like, the Latino part of the community. I've been talking to a fair amount of comics, as you saw in that photo album. And we talk a lot about race on the podcast, but it's always black and white. It's very rare I get to hear the Latino perspective on everything. What is it, I guess, for the Latino community within comedy? You guys are like close-knit. Y'all, as soon as you see another Latino comic, you just gravitate towards them?
Well, it's like I said, when I first started, there was very few. So yeah, so I want to say, yeah, when I first started, that's the way it was. Like it was like literally it was only me and some other dude named Giovanni Diaz running around open mic. Like the whole open mic scene in the north side, we were the only ones that would like do it like consistently. You know, I'm not saying there wasn't like a few other ones, but like Noel Gutierrez used to run the mic, for example. There used to be Noel Gutierrez. I don't think he does comedy anymore. But he was only at the mic he used to run. So he would run the mic Tuesdays and Fridays, and those were the only two mics you ever saw him at. There's a few other ones that you would just see at this mic. But yeah, so it was only two of us, like in the open mic scene. And, you know, you're talking about like, this is one of the most Latino cities in the country. So it was weird. Now I feel there's and not only Latinos, it's just in general in blacks and women and like Asians, like Middle Easterns. There's just so many more that now it's difficult for you to know all of them and for you to to have the same small group that we used to have back when I started 9 years ago. Yeah. Almost 10 years, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, I guess it's good. The change and the growth of that is good, but do you miss how small that community was, or are you happy with the fact that it's growing?
No, I'm happy. I'm happy how it's growing. I mean, everybody should be able to pursue stand-up. I'm one of those people that believes that there are far too many stand-up comedians, like too many people trying, but I'm also one, like, you can't tell people don't follow your dreams, you know? So everybody has a right, like I did or like you did, to try to follow their dreams.
Absolutely.
I do feel there is a drop in quality level when it comes to Latino comedians, because like stand up is, especially I would say in the Mexican community. I don't know about the Puerto Rican community.
The what community?
I would say in the Mexican community for sure. I can speak on that. I can't speak about the Puerto Rican community because they're a little more Americanized.
Interesting.
But but in the Mexican community, stand up was a new concept in Chicago. You know, like our parents didn't grow up with stand up.
Yeah.
There was no stand up in Mexico. So when you start here, it's like only like the real funny ones got into stand up, you know? Well, I feel like white people, like, they grew up with stand up. So even like the mediocre ones try it out, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But Latino community is getting like that too. So even some of the mediocre ones are trying it out, you know, but it's all fun, you know? Some of them might get really good in 2 years and be like, oh, that motherfucker said I was mediocre. Now look at me. You know what I'm saying? Like, you never know, man. You never know who's going to blow up.
Yeah, yeah. I'm with you, man.
Yeah.
That's interesting because like in with black culture, like stand up is a Def Jam. And Richard Pryor. So like that's a part of the culture too. I actually didn't know that. What's the difference between Latino and Hispanic?
You know what? I think there is a like a definition in a dictionary definition. I'm not 100% sure, but this is what I know. Okay. One of them includes Brazilians. And the other one doesn't include Brazilians because Brazilians they don't speak Spanish.
Oh, I didn't know. Oh, they speak.
They speak Portuguese because they were conquered by Portugal. So I know I forget. I mean, okay. I think Hispanics includes Brazilians.
All right. Well.
And includes even people from Spain and stuff like that. And Latinos just includes the Spanish-speaking countries that are on this side of the hemisphere. Yeah, it's something like that. It's something like that. I never really pay much attention to like those type of labels.
Yeah. I'll just say Latino.
Yeah, just say Latino. Yeah, just say Latino. No, yeah, and if you go to the Latin American countries and you tell them Latinos, most of them wouldn't even know because like. In the individual countries, they're from that country. You know what I'm saying? Like, you go to Mexico, people don't say the Mexican. They don't say the Latino community. Right. They say the Mexican community or Ecuador, the Ecuadorian. You know what I'm saying? So it's here in the United States that they try to group us together. Yeah. Yeah, and because we have similar backgrounds and we have the same language. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And so you're following your dreams right now, which I'm very happy for you. How did your parents feel when you said especially if they didn't come up with stand up?
My parents didn't come up with stand up. I actually hid it from them. Not hid it like. I mean, they never directly asked me, "Hey, you a stand-up comedian, right?" So I never denied it, but I didn't tell them either. Like I just started doing open mics. I would just leave. Yeah. I was still living with them when I started, so I would just leave. I would get home from work and just leave. They wouldn't say nothing, and eventually, little by little, started trickling in from like other relatives, seeing it like on Facebook, and they were telling them like, "Hey, you know your son is doing comedy or whatever." So they didn't ask me nothing for like the first year or 2 years, so they finally asked me, and then, I mean. They see it as a hobby.
To this day?
To this day, if I'm not making a living out of it, they still see it as like, you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, so they still don't see it as like, hey, this is what his passion, this is what he likes. No, they see it like, oh yeah, like, you gonna go do your show or what? Yeah, all right.
You gonna do your little comedy thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. How does that make you feel?
I mean, I never expected them to understand to begin with. So this is it's not like hurtful or anything because they're not minimizing it, like out of bad intentions. You know, they're just doing it because they don't know what stand up is. Like I said, you know, they grew up with a different type of comedy. There was like in Mexico, there was like a type of comedian that will get up on the microphone and speak on stage, but they would do like street jokes. You know, there wasn't stand up like what we consider stand up. Right. Whereas your own material, you do bits. You know, it's like straight up street jokes or characters and stuff like that.
That's something that I'm not a fan of America in a lot of ways. I'm not a fan. America frustrates me, we'll say. But that's one thing that I think is the coolest part about America is our stand-up comedy history. Mm-hmm. Like, we have been doing this shit since, like, the early 1900s, and so we've had time to develop past street jokes. Yeah. And I think other countries are slowly catching up, but we're, like, Americans are like the eons ahead in stand-up.
Yeah, I think we are. Yeah, that I would agree with.
Yeah, something to be proud of from here. Do you like America?
I like America, man. I like America. I like, you know what? So the way it is I mean, I didn't grow up in Mexico. I grew up here, but I was born in Mexico, and I still go to Mexico like twice a year.
Yeah.
I was just there a couple months ago, and it's so easy to complain about the United States living in the United States, right? Sure. But the United States, you got to remember, it's still a first world country in comparison to these other countries where a lot of immigrants come from. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it you know, if you want to compare it to like Canada or England or France, maybe USA is lacking in a lot of shit, you know, like healthcare, education, stuff like that. But if you compare it to like, let's say Mexico, mm-hmm. It's just like it's just the job opportunities here is insane. In Mexico, there's just no opportunity to make money. The wages are so low, and it's crazy to come from a country like that, especially like immigrants like my parents, to come to a country like this, and for their kids to go and complain about this country, you know, right. Because they'll be like, dude, people in, you know, where we're from are making $20 a day working 8 hours. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. So it's So I like the job opportunities in this country. Of course, like I said, if you want to compare it to other first world countries, or sure. If you, there is, like, for example, here the police are racist.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, in Mexico they're not racist. They beat everyone up. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like in Mexico, in Mexico, in Mexico, like they solicit bribes. Like, yeah. And in the United States, I've never heard of like someone getting pulled over and bribing a cop.
I would never.
Never. No, because the cops make enough money that they're not gonna get bribed by, you know. Cause so in Mexico it's like, let's just put it in dollars, right? Here you get pulled over, a speeding ticket, it's $35. Yeah. So you give a cop $20, and then you both end up winning, right? Because you don't pay the $35, and they end up making their $20. Sure. Here, a cop would never get bribed for $20. They're not gonna risk their career for $20, you know. So it's just. Yeah, it's just it's a different thing. Yeah, it's a whole different world. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Mexico and I love going there, but yeah, I would say that the money making possibilities are far less than here.
I believe you. I every time I talk to a comic that has immigrant parents, that's something that they say. It's pretty across the board. I want to say Anthony Hernandez talked about that as well.
Okay.
You know Anthony?
No, Hernandez or Fuentes?
Hernandez, right? Am I crazy?
No, you're right. I might be confusing him with somebody else.
Yeah, I'm losing my mind. I'm not good with names and remembering of shit. But I essentially.
You know what? I think I do know Anthony Hernandez.
Yeah. Is it Fuentes?
Fuentes is the Puerto Rican one.
But this is Fuentes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
He's an immigrant family.
Yeah.
Anytime you talk to them, they talk about that, about the opportunities, and I think my perspective is just different because of historically, like, opportunities in black people and how we're here, so on and so forth. But do you use I know we've been on some shows together. We've never like talked.
No, we've never had like a no, I don't remember.
Adult conversation. But I don't remember. Do you use Spanish in your stand up?
I've done stand-up shows in Spanish. I honestly, the few shows that I've done, they pay better than the English ones because there's just there's so few comedians that can do it.
Right.
That can speak. There's so few comedians that can speak it and do jokes about it. Mm-hmm. So they pay a little bit. So I do them because of that. I prefer not to because it's not that I don't speak Spanish fluently, but I learned how to do stand-up in English. All my jokes are in English. You know, when you write a joke after you told it a while, you have a certain rhythm to it, certain wording, that if you just translate it in Spanish, it'll take the same amount of time it took you to get it where you want it to in English. It'll take that in Spanish, and there's no open mic equivalents in Spanish. They've tried to start open mics in Spanish, but they failed.
Wasn't Spanglish?
So this was Spanglish. They gave this is the problem that the open mics that I've seen, including Spanglish.
Okay.
And I don't want to talk shit about them in the sense that, at least they're trying, but they give comedians the options between English and Spanish. And once you give the option, comedians are gonna go for English because they're gonna try Spanish for like 30-40 seconds and they're gonna go bad, so they're gonna go to what's familiar. Mm-hmm. So I always told people, if you're gonna do a mic in Spanish, do it all in Spanish. Don't give the comedian the chance, but they don't do them. I've heard there's a mic in Pilsen now in Spanish. I've I've talked to a comedian named Hondo. He's from, I think, either northern Indiana or the South Chicago suburbs, I forget. And he told me, like, I told him, pass me the information. I'll go, if it's once a month, I'll go to it. But since I started doing comedy 9 years ago, there hasn't been a consistent Spanish mic. So there's nowhere to practice it. So once you do a show, it's like, and I do like 1 or 2 a year, I'm talking about. Right. So when I do like a joke in Spanish, that's literally my first time ever trying that out. There's no, so if it bombs, it's like, shit, what do I do now? You know?
Yeah, I'm with you. Do you, you seem to have like a real respect of the craft. Does that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, what do you mean respect of the craft? I mean, yeah, I mean, I respect I'm a stand-up comedian, so I respect good stand-up. I respect the work that goes into it.
Have you ever been to L.A.?
I've never been to L.A.
Okay. Let me explain where I'm coming from with this. Have you ever, there's a vibe, there's a certain type of comic that you don't really find in Chicago because there's no industry, where they really want to be like a model or an actor, but they're doing stand-up because they're like, whatever gets me fame. You don't seem to be concerned about fame. You're concerned about being good at what you're good at and ultimately living off of that.
Okay, I mean, I'll say it like this. I've heard of the LA people that, you know, you have actors that their managers tell them, go try an open mic, you know, that could lead you some roles from comedy or whatever, right? Yeah, obviously, as a person that dedicates himself to stand-up, I don't have respect for that type of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, right? It's not that I'm not concerned with fame. I mean, we all would like to be, you know, rich and not necessarily famous, but rich, you know. And to be rich, you have to kind of be famous in stand-up. So, unfortunately, that's what comes with it. But I mean, I was talking to Ken, and this is before he blew up. You know, I told him like straight up, like, and he said the same thing. Like, even if, you know, I never make it or nothing like that, stand-up is in my blood now. Like, I'm gonna keep doing it the rest of my life. Like, maybe there might be a point in my life in 10 years where I'm like, you know what? I gave it 20 years. I never became famous, but so I'm not, maybe won't pursue it as hard, but I will always, I don't think there's ever going to be a time where I'm like, oh, it's been 2 years since I haven't, you know, even during the pandemic, I was performing, you know, like.
You did like comedy pickup and stuff?
No, we did with Anthony Fuentes, we did a few gigs, because he lives in the border with Wisconsin. Wisconsin never closed, bro, so. So, yeah.
Cheese and hanging out.
Yeah, we did a few gigs out there. So it's just, stand-up is in my blood now, and I do have a lot of respect for good stand-up and comedians that work on the craft.
I'm with you. And then how long have you known Ken? Because he's the one, so this whole thing started when he brought you up on his episode.
Ken is, he started in 2017.
Okay.
I don't remember meeting him in 2017. I have a good memory with these things. I do remember having him on Facebook since around that time.
Okay.
But meeting him, we did a show at the Comedy Shrine the following year in 2018.
Okay.
It was like, Joey Villagomez headline, I featured. And Ken was like, even when he started, he was already like a draw in Aurora. Yeah. So they were booking for a lot of shows in Aurora, just hoping that he would bring, you know, like an audience in, you know.
Yeah.
So that's how I met him. We did a show for the Comedy Shrine in Aurora, and they just brought him in to do like an opening spot, I guess. Yeah. And that's how I met him. And Ken was completely different than he is now. Like he was super shy, dude. Like, he came in, like, I don't remember he even spoke any words. He just came in the green room, said hi to Joey and to me, and then went back with his friend outside. And he was doing a lot of the material like that he still does now, every now and then, every joke. Well, I don't know now, but at least 6 months ago he was still doing. Yeah. But he was doing it just like word by word, like, you know, like he had it memorized, like he wasn't performing like he performs now.
Yeah,
like,
there's a flow about it now.
Yeah, it was just like, he was just like if he was reading off of it, you know, like it was always funny. He always knew how to write jokes. He always knew how to have punchlines. And like I said, it's still material he still does now. So it's funny, but he definitely wasn't the performer that he is now. The monster that he is now. Yeah.
Yeah, monster's a good way to
describe it. Definitely.
Damn.
So that's how I met him, and then he and I our families are from the same part in Mexico.
Okay.
Like and that's rare, you know. That's rare. I've in comedy I've never met anybody else from that part of Mexico, at least. And so so we bonded, and we both like to drink. So we so we would drink a lot, and he lived in Aurora. So I want to say before the pandemic, we didn't really hang out that much. Yeah. We just like we recognized each other. We said hi. After the pandemic, we started hanging out, and I got drunk a few times in Aurora, slept in his couch because I live in the city and not to drive all the way back and stuff like that. Yeah, so
That's
so
how you build bonds.
We became drinking buddies and shit like that. And
that's dope, man.
Yeah.
Speaking of the pandemic, how was that? What was going like? What were you doing right before the pandemic, and what happened when you went into the pandemic?
So, man, right before the pandemic, well, the scene was different back then.
That's what I'm hearing.
Were you here?
I came in 2021.
Okay, so you got to before the pandemic. I want to say the scene was a little more important because there was no TikTok. There was no.
That's right.
There was no TikTok. Instagram Reels were just becoming a thing, so. In order to get opportunities, people were still looking like at the traditional ways. Like, I got to get a JFL edition. I got to work at this club. Now I feel like people are like, even if I don't work at this club, if I'm getting the followers on TikTok, if I'm getting the followers on Instagram, then, I don't need to work at this club every weekend. Back then, it was like you had to be like climbing the scene. So I was doing pretty good. I had just done CYSK, Community Chanel, which at that time had like, it was kind of like the show where like,
that was the thing.
That was the show that you wanted to do to demonstrate that you were like big in the scene or that you were one of the. So I had just done it like a month before, and for my first time, and I had done like Chuck, and I was doing a bunch of stuff like in the scene and stuff like that, and then the pandemic came in.
I keep hearing that when I talk to comics that have been here before. It feels like there's two. We'll say two classes. There's pre-pandemic Chicago comics and post-pandemic Chicago comics, and it seems like there was like an influx of people, including myself, that we like all migrated to Chicago like after the pandemic. But what was it like for you going to mics and shows pre-pandemic? Was it bigger? Was it better? Do you miss those days?
Let me see. Bigger? No, it wasn't bigger. There was definitely it was less people, so it was smaller.
Oh, less comics?
Less comics, I want to say. Right now, there's so many more comics and more mics than that. I think there's more mics than there was before. I want to say it's just what I said. It was like it was more scene focused than it is now. That's what I remember before, and it's weird because like during the pandemic, a lot of people quit or slowed down or stop making stand up their priority. So a lot of the power just shifted. There's a bunch of comedians that outright quit, and there's a bunch of comedians that didn't quit, but they were like big in the scene that now don't really pursue it as hard and stuff like that. So it kind of took a lot of people like, all right, so these were my friends, the ones we were building up something, and now I'm alone again. I got to start at the bottom. But you know what? These new comedians, they all know each other now. So now I got to get cool with everyone again. And you know what I'm saying? So I would say it was a little difficult in that sense. And they're like, oh, I got to start from the bottom again. And proving yourself again and stuff like that. And, open mics can be very bad sometimes. You know how they are. It's just if the people, I mean, and I get it, because if you're a comedian and you're constantly at open mics, you're hearing comedians every day. You're hearing comedians or every other day. You're hearing 20, 30 comedians. So I can get it, comedy starts getting boring to you.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to go to an open mic and understand that if everyone's looking at their phone and you do a 4-minute set, and that 4-minute set, you get everyone to stop looking at their phone and get a couple chuckles. That's killing compared to, so you got to understand what's going on in that mic, or what the vibe is like in that mic. And
it's adjusting, realizing that like, not a waste of time is not the right word, but it's like, it's not as big a reward as being in front of like a real
of course,
audience. And then during like pandemic, were you doing you're doing Wisconsin with
so I was doing Zoom. Is that what you wanted to ask? I was doing
you were doing the Zoom stuff?
Yeah, I was doing Zoom stuff. It was it was horrible. It was horrible, but there was no. So I was actually booked for a show, like I want to say it was late March. There was a comedian. She doesn't do comedy anymore. Her name is Grace Snyder. She doesn't do comedy anymore. When the pandemic hit, the show got canceled. Obviously, the show was like March 20 something. So the show got canceled. So instead, she was one of the first one that tried to make It's like, since the show got canceled, let's do Zoom. And then nobody showed up to the Zoom except for me. And then
no,
so then she
jokes for nobody.
No, yeah, we didn't do it. We just ended up talking, and then she was like, "I want to start a weekly Zoom mic." She's like, "Do you want to help me host?" So I was literally hosting like a Zoom mic for like the first 3 months of the pandemic on Saturdays, and it was bad. It was bad, but like those first 3 months were when people were taking it seriously, though. Like, so people were actually in their houses doing nothing, you know.
Yeah.
Then like as soon as like the summer hit, that's when Anthony Fuentes started doing the shows. I told Grace, like, I can't host a mic anymore because I'm doing shows on Saturdays or stuff like that.
Real humans.
Yeah, yeah. So and it was like, yeah, I think she kept it going for like another year or so. But I stopped hosting it. Every now and then I would still do the mic. But yeah, it was
Yeah, the pandemic really showed how important the audience is.
No, yeah, it's a whole different it's a whole different form of comedy. You know, it's like improv, stand up, and then there's Zoom. You know, it's a whole different type of comedy. And I actually adjusted for a little while. Like, I started writing like shorter jokes just because, like, I the thing that I like now is like writing bits. Like I try to write. Like, to get my ideas in a bit, in a joke, my bit is going to be like 4 minutes at least.
Right.
And so when I was doing those jokes in the pandemic, I was like, I'm losing everyone by the first minute. You know, by the time the punchlines start rolling in and stuff like that, no one's paying attention no more. So then I just started writing like 20, 30-second jokes. Right. And I found that was a better formula for Zoom.
It sounds like you really love, like, you were not playing around when you said you like the writing process.
Yeah, I do like the writing process. I do.
Do you like writing more than you like performing?
No, but I would say I wouldn't say I like writing as more than I like performing, but I am a better writer than I am a performer.
Okay.
I just think like performance wise, compared to when I started, I've gotten so much better. Yeah. So much better, right? But I still don't feel like I'm a great performer. Like, the only reason that I have good sets or great sets is because of the writing that I put in beforehand. You know,
when it comes to the performing part, what do you think is lacking there?
I just don't feel like I'm a natural performer. So like I see Ken, for example. I see like there's a lot of Latino comedians that are really good at it. I like Ken. I like Jason Acevedo. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you know him. I like Avi Sanchez. Like, when they do a bit, they commit. Like, they're in it. They're committing to the bit. And I just feel like there's always that little part of me like, what if it bombs? You're gonna look like an idiot just doing this voice, you know? Like, so it's just like there's a part of me that holds me back, I think, in the performance arena. But I mean, like I said, I think I've gotten so much better, and I can still keep improving in that. Yeah. But yeah, I just feel like there's so much performance-wise. I just feel like I don't commit 100%. The only times that I feel like, man, I've committed myself 100% is when I'm already like 10 minutes in and I'm already like doing super well. Then because I'm already confident enough to do it.
You've built that rapport with the audience.
Yeah,
they trust you, vice versa.
Yeah,
I know what you're saying. Do you how often do you do like headlining sets? Where are you at?
So in like showcases in Chicago.
Yeah.
I do headline. I wouldn't say. Let me see. I want to say maybe a third of the showcases that I go on, or maybe a quarter of like they usually book me to close it out.
Okay.
Yeah, I was pretty much closing out a lot right before the pandemic. Like showcases. Now, like when it comes to clubs and stuff like that, I've never headlined a club. Technically, I did a few like closing sets at the Comedy Shrine that were like 35 minutes. Yeah. But I don't consider that headlining because like nobody came for me. It was the show. You know, it was that Saturday show, and then everyone did like 10, 15 minutes, and I did 35 at the end a few times. Right. But other than that, I've never headlined an actual club.
Do you hit the road at all?
Oh yeah, whenever I get a chance to. I've actually I've gone with Ken a few times to Indiana now.
Nice, man.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. And there used to be a comedian here named Antonio Aguilar. He's in Wisconsin now. He was the first one that like he just needed a ride, so he's the first one that started taking me to like road gigs, and I would just do a spot at the beginning, and I learned a lot because it was the first time that I was like doing comedy for like strictly white people that were not from Chicago, and a lot of them older. You know, like
How did it go for you?
Not well a few times. You know, not well. I want to say out of the first like 4 times that I left the city like that to like Michigan and Indiana, stuff like that, I want to say I did like, out of the first 4 times he took me, I did bad 2 times, I did well 2 times. Okay. So it was
it's flip of a coin.
Yeah, and I at that time I feel like I still wasn't good enough to like riff. So I would just do material, and if the material they weren't liking the material, I had no backup plan. I was just gonna keep doing material, you know. Yeah, yeah, I would just power through it. Now, yeah, I can, like, if you know, now I have a better skill set where if they're not enjoying something, I can riff a little. I can change directions. I can be like, all right, they don't like these type of jokes. I have enough material now where I can go
and play with it. And
yeah,
I'm assuming you're more comfortable on stage.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
10 years. A lot of the comics, from what I'm gathering of this podcast, most of the people that watch consistently are like newer open mic comics. Mm-hmm. Let me do the thing.
Yeah, it goes by so fast.
How do you go about writing your material? Like, what's your process?
So I don't physically write anymore. By the way, I just
you Biggie Smalls.
Yeah. Okay. It didn't help me out. Like I started when I started, I would physically write, but then what I would say on stage would be so completely different. And then I would find myself just doing these jokes, and basically after I did them, then I would write them down. Like after I already wrote them and performed them, then I'll be like, I need somewhere to save them. I'll write them down.
So it's like you thought of it in your head, said it out loud.
Yeah.
And then
then I physically wrote them just to have them somewhere. But then I was like, I don't really need that anymore. I'm like, I could just do the voice memos. Like I would rather do that. Like if I'm gonna just save them to save them, I'll just do the voice memos. And but like I'm like I like punchlines. That seems weird to me, for me to be saying that. But there's a lot of comedians that I don't feel are punchline based. Like for example, let me give you an example. Somebody, if somebody, like if you had a crazy trip this weekend, you're like, I got home and I'm like, I want to write about this crazy Hawaii trip I had this weekend. You don't have any idea what, but you go and you write about that, and I'll be like, if I haven't thought of a good punchline yet, why would I write about my trip in Hawaii yet?
So
now
you think of the punch before.
Yeah, and then I'm like, how do you get to the punchline and stuff like that? So if I think about like a funny punchline or a funny situation, one of my newest jokes that's doing really well, for example, is a joke about Texas.
Okay.
It's a joke that I do about not knowing anything about Texas, and they asked me what part of Dallas I'm from, because I lie. It's a big joke, and I thought about the punchline first. I'm like, okay, so I'm just gonna say that I don't know Dallas. I'm just gonna say I'm by the airport, and when they ask me what part, I want to say by Terminal 2. You know what I'm saying? Stuff shit like that, and I'm like, how do I get to this punchline? So I just build a whole story around that punchline, and now the joke is like 4 or 5 minutes long, and it's killing everywhere. I just did it at Saini's like
that's awesome.
10 days ago. Yeah, and it's like, and that's the way I've always been. Like I first start with like a punchline. Maybe the joke is only 20, 30 seconds long, and I build around it like a whole 4-minute bit around it.
And then you were saying other comics, we'll say newer comics probably, lacking in the punchline part of it. Yeah,
like they're writing a. Their approach to writing is different. That's what I would say. Like they have like a premise, and they'll be like, I think about the punchlines later. And I'm always like I can't just think of a premise, like, and they'd be like, oh, what should I write? Like I could do that, but that's not my preferred choice of writing.
That's interesting. Okay, so for me, I think of like a topic. So right now I'm talking about how I'm an introvert. Mm-hmm. I was like, okay, I learned about it in school, the web. You put let's say the color blue, right? Uh-huh. And then anything, the sky, Blue's Clues, Crips, whatever it is. Like you connect anything to the color blue. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then I make this web as big as possible until I find the words that stick out to me.
Okay.
And then I'm like, okay, well, my point is I'm talking about being an introvert. I have these words that stick out to me that describe that feeling, and then I try to describe it on stage, and then I write it down.
Okay.
I don't know if that made any sense.
It didn't, but but look, this is the way I see it. The way I see it is, you can, like, everyone can't have the same creative process. 'Cause this is a creative process at the end. So like, this is one of my, like, maybe like this is one of the things that I don't like when people do things because they heard on the podcast. For example, there's this old thing like Jerry Seinfeld writes 30 minutes every night.
What?
That's the thing comedians tell you, and like, they write 30 minutes every night, Jerry Seinfeld. Okay. But I'm like, that's the way his mind works. That's the way his creative process works. There's a different guy, I forgot the comedian's name right now, but he tweets things like, you should be writing like this and stuff like his, and I'm like, I'm sure he's not doing it like in bad faith but no, that's the way your creative process works. Everybody's creative process is different. Like I said, most people write. For example, I remember I did a show with Ken, and he did like 10, 12 minutes. I know he didn't write any of that. You know what I mean? So it's just everyone writes, everyone creates differently. You know, it's like, you know, you paint the garden and the bush. What do you paint first, the bush and then the garden, or the garden and then the bush at the end? Yeah. It's like everybody, creative wise, everyone is different. So I just think everybody's creative process has to be with their creative mentality and their personality.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I think once you click into that, that's when you start developing your voice.
Yeah.
Which I've been feeling recently. Like I used to try to emulate everybody else, and as of recent, I'm like, okay, well, how does Aaron go about all of this stuff? And then I know there are are there any other comics that you would suggest to come on the podcast that you think would enjoy this?
That would enjoy it? There's this comedian named Brian Johnson. He's from the suburbs though. He's been doing stand up longer than me. Okay. But he's always been like he's never been like 100% active, just because he has some type of mental, like, he thinks it's bipolarism. Okay. I don't think it's bipolarism.
I want to give him my address.
Yeah, I think it's like just severe, like, autism, whatever. I mean, and he's a cool dude, but he's my most interesting. He's the most interesting person I've heard on podcast, because he's just like, because Ken said when he shouted me out, Ken said like, get Oscar because he has like Asperger's and he just says what's on his mind. He said something like that. Yeah. Now, if Ken thinks that about me, Brian Johnson is like 10 times more. You know what I'm saying? Like
this guy?
Yeah, that's him. Okay. That's him. That's him. He's like 10 times. Like, he literally tells you, like, he has like the best stories, because he's like, he'll tell you how many times he's had sex, and he's like, what, like, and all his like, he has no filter when it comes to like embarrassing stuff that happened to him. Yeah. So he's just interesting to hear, man. He's just an interesting person to hear.
I think I've seen this guy.
Yeah, he's like, I would say him, and the other person in that picture was Giovanni Diaz. Yeah, you already had Giovanni on.
Wild one. So
yeah.
He's talking about guns and coke. And
yeah, Giovanni was wild. Giovanni was wild. He's not active in the comedy scene anymore, but
his podcast seems to be his thing now, right?
Yeah, but when I started, he was like, he was when I first said, like, it was like two Latinos running around. He was the other one that was. Okay. It was me and him with two Mexicans running around the open mic scene, and they were he was out like consistent, like every night. And he's from Waukegan originally, so he was close to Milwaukee too. So he was doing like the Milwaukee scene and the Chicago scene at the same time. So he knows a lot of people. Like.
Okay. And then I'm gonna be wrapping it up soon. So before I do, what do you do outside of comedy? What is your life outside of that?
What is my life outside of? Well, I do Lyft. So first of all, that's
you
like,
Lyft? Like
no Lyft, like like Uber Lyft. Yeah, that's a joke I have to, by the way. And outside of that, I play soccer. I like playing soccer. I don't like falling in love and getting my heart broken, but that seems like what I like to do because it happens to me often, right?
Relationship right now?
No, not in a relationship right now. I just got out of one. I mean, it wasn't really like, it's complicated, but sure. Yeah. Well, and then no, I'm not in a relationship right now. Other than that, I mean, I have normal life, dude. I right now I'm being sober. I'm I'm in the middle of a 3-month sober period. I'm almost 2 months in.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I'm just doing it till like New Year's.
Why did you decide to do that?
I was just spending too much money, man. I was spending too much money, and I drank like I've always been a drinker since I was like 15, 16. I've always drank a lot more than I would say the average person. But 2022 and 2023, the beginning, I just felt like I did it more than my previous life, and
you were taking it too far.
Yeah, and I was just like, you know what, I need to take a break, so I'm taking a 3-month break right now.
How is it going? Because I have the same thing with weed.
Okay.
Yeah, I spend too much, I smoke too much, and it's hard, especially at night, because it helps me go to sleep. But how is it for you not smoking? Like, how has it been?
So, it's weird, you know, because the way I play soccer every Sunday, but it's, you know, soccer. It's more like we're gonna go hang out with the friends, which is the game is the excuse, but really the fun part is after the game when we all drink and talk and bullshit and stuff like that. So it's difficult because I leave right after the game because I don't think I could be in that environment because I'll be too tempted to drink. I get like for example like when I turn 1 month without drinking, you kind of get like a lot of cravings because you're like, you could just say to yourself, well, you did a month already, just go back to drinking. Or when I did a month and a half, which was halfway point, like you could just go back to drinking. You already did it. You already proved that you can do it. You know, so you get like a lot of cravings like at that. So I'm next week will be my 2 month. So I'm sure I'm gonna get the cravings too at 2 months. Be like, just stop. You know, you're not gonna drink during Christmas, dude. You know what I'm saying? So it's just hard to control the impulse like that. And I'm just so used to drinking in every situation that it's hard to adjust. You know, it is. It's hard to adjust.
I'm with you. That's how I've made all of my friends is smoking weed. It's like I associate weed with meeting people and talking to people and like getting to know somebody. You roll a joint and you pass it back and forth. Or you have a microphone. Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, it's just, for me, it's like how do I watch this soccer game? Because without drinking, you know? Like, what do I do? Because Mexico actually played last week, and I watch all the Mexico games, and we went to, like, my friends, like, hey, we should go to a bar. I'm like, what do I do at a bar if I'm not drinking? You know, I just eat. Yeah, I drank water and I ate pizza, but I'm just like, it's not the same. You know, like really I could have just watched it at home instead. You know, like, or something. Yeah. So it's difficult when you don't, like, I didn't realize how like everything I do involves drinking. That's just my normal thing to do. You know, when you work on a car, you have beers around the car and you're just drinking, working on your car. You know, everything just has beer around it, and I'm just like, wow. Like, so it's just that's been a little difficult is to adjust to not drinking. Well, congrats on getting this far. You have 1 more month?
1 more month, yeah.
I believe in you.
No, thank you.
And then, like, this is one of my favorite parts. Last question is, can you look in the camera and act as if this is you 5 years from now? And you can say whatever you want to yourself, but 5 years from now.
So I can say, so I'm me now and saying something to somebody 5 years from now?
To yourself 5 years from now. So if you look back on this 5 years from now, what do you want to say to yourself?
What I want to say this 5 years from now. If I look back at this, I mean, I hope you got your shit together, man. I don't know, man. Hopefully you saved up some money by now. Like you could control your drinking problem. Hopefully, hopefully you're still doing comedy. Maybe explore more things like script writing and stuff like that. Which was the original plan, and I never actually got down to it. I have a lot of ideas. Hopefully you wrote that, and hopefully you've traveled to more countries. You know, like I do travel a lot, but it's mainly to Mexico and the U.S. So yeah, hopefully go to Canada at least, motherfucker. Do something. Yeah, I don't know.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's take this picture.
All right.